Great to be with you again. Good to see everybody out on a cold Monday night. Cold for somebody from South Carolina, that's for sure. Anyway, I enjoyed visiting the Czech and Slovak Museum here in town. Since my father was born in Slovakia, I thought we better go by and see that. And so that was really nice. They've done a very nice job there. And I learned some things I didn't know. And so I recommend that to you. I was interested to see how they moved that whole building after the flood, moved it up there on the hill and all. That was really quite an undertaking. And so a lot of effort, time and effort went into that, and everybody was very nice over there. Well, I got some questions, so that was good. And the first question was, why did the dinosaurs go extinct? Okay. And so we know, I think we first encounter with dinosaurs in the Bible is in Genesis 1:21. It says, and God created great whales. And I understand that word that's translated in the King James whales would include any kind of large creature, okay, like a dinosaur. And so that's where we think they were created. And then we see dinosaurs pop up again in the book of Job, but that's after the flood. We know that Noah took 2 of every kind of animal, male and female. Some people think it's 2 pairs of animals. Some people just have 1 pair of animals. 2 pairs or 2 animals. I'm not sure how the Hebrew reads there. Some people disagree about that. In any case, so we know that all the dinosaurs that we have after the flood were descended from those kinds of dinosaurs that were on the ark. Now, how many of you been to the Ark Encounter? Okay, well, just about everybody. Okay, so you saw all the kinds of dinosaurs, all the models they have showing what the dinosaurs looked like, the kinds of dinosaurs. And that gave us all the dinosaurs that we see in the fossil record. And so you get to Job. Job's pretty early, and you see Behemoth, you see Leviathan, and so they're apparently dinosaurs existing during the Ice Age. I believe that Job was written during the Ice Age, because he talks about snow and ice a lot. And then you think, well, what happened to them? What happened to these? I mean, it doesn't make any sense that these were mythological creatures in Job, because God is, he's pointing to the biggest creatures, the most powerful creatures that Job knows about, and it wouldn't make any sense if he didn't actually have personal experience with Behemoth and Leviathan and how large and fierce they were. So where did they go? Well, we have dinosaur myths from all over the world, legends. Even in European legends, we have Beowulf, and so Grendel is probably a dinosaur. And so we find these dinosaur legends and myths all over the world. Our different cultures have those. And when you notice, whenever they talk about dinosaurs, somebody's trying to kill them. Okay. Now, my name is George, and George is not that common these days. But if I go to a Lebanese church and they call for George, everybody turns around. All the men turn around, because they're all named for the patron saint of Lebanon, which is St. George, who killed the dragon. All right. And so every time, and I guess it's like hunters today. Hunters want to kill the biggest, meanest thing they can find and mount its head on the trophy on the wall, that type of thing. So I think there's habitat destruction. For example, in Australia, we have found fossils of Komodo dragon type of animals, where the bottom of the chin of the Komodo dragon is my height, 6 foot. Okay, so there's no big Komodo dragons like that in Australia today, because what would they eat? Somebody said, kind of in jest, they ate all the Australian elephants. Okay, and then once they ate all the Australian elephants, they all died. Okay, so most of the dinosaurs we know about are ones from before the flood. They got buried quickly and were preserved by the flood. And so we probably don't have much in the way of evidence of the dinosaurs after the flood. But I think you have habitat destruction and you have hunting. And now there's some people who think that dinosaurs are still roaming the earth. So my friend and former student, Dino Dave Wetzel. Have you heard Dino Dave Wetzel? Okay. So you go to his website. It's genesispark.com. Now it's like Jurassic Park, that type of thing. So it's genesispark.com, and he still thinks that dinosaurs roam the earth. And he's in retirement now, and he goes all over the world. He gives cameras to natives in third world countries and shows them pictures of dinosaurs. So if you ever see anything like that, you take a picture of it, and I'll come back and collect the camera. So he's got a whole book full of fuzzy pictures of dinosaurs. He even thinks he has a picture of a bioluminescent pterodactyl from Papua New Guinea. Anyway, I tell people, I disassociate myself from Dave until he can get one of these things, put it in a cage, and bring it here. And then I want everybody to know that he was one of my students, okay? I want some of that fame too, okay? So if you're interested in dinosaurs still roaming the earth, Dino Dave is your man, okay? Maybe you can get him to come speak here sometime. He's a lot of fun. Any other questions about dinosaurs? Did I cover? Anybody have a follow-up to that? Some people say, well, aren't crocodiles, aren't they dinosaurs? They're not, okay? So we can tell by doing oxygen isotope measurements on the bones of the dinosaurs that they weren't like creatures today. So creatures today are usually warm-blooded or cold-blooded, and dinosaurs seem to be something in the middle between those two, okay? And we don't have anything like that, that I know of today. So crocodiles are not dinosaurs, all right? And dinosaurs, as far as I know, have all gone extinct. Okay, so, and the second question was, where did Cain get his wife? Ken Ham said if he had a nickel for every time somebody asked him where Cain got his wife, he'd be a rich man, for sure. So I think in the secular world, worldly people who are not familiar with the Bible, they're concerned about the fact that Cain married his sister. Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters. He either married a sister or maybe a niece, perhaps. And people say, horrors, that's incest. But that idea of incest is a pretty late idea. It didn't exist back then. And you say, well, how did he get away with that? Well, he got away with it because the human genome was pure. There was no mutations, Adam and Eve, okay? As sin and curse descended, the mutations are building up. So in the Bible, you go to Abraham, he marries his half-sister, okay, and that's not a problem. Then you get to Moses' time, and they said, cut that stuff out, no more marrying sisters, all right? And then you get down, a little bit later, and, it's a problem marrying first cousins. We don't do that today. And there's some places, like we took mission teams to Newfoundland, and I remember billboards warning people not to marry their second cousins. And why should the government care about this, to put billboards all over the Newfoundland? Well, the Newfies are all from about 4 different counties in Great Britain, and so they're all kind of intermarried already. And so, there's this terrible price to pay in mental illness and deformities and that type of thing. The government has to pick up the tab. So they're trying to get them not to marry their second cousins. So that's how far down we've come. So you think about that, every child that's born, every new baby has 100 new mutations that the world's never seen before. Now, what are mutations? That's just errors in the genetic code, okay? God didn't create it like that. It's because of sin, all right? And so every new baby has 100 new mutations the world's never seen before. And you have what? 8 billion people on the earth, so that's 8 billion times 100. So it's 800 billion mutations. So the genetic load, that is weighing down on the whole human race. And, you may know, a young couple, I don't know everybody here, I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but I've been in churches where there's a wonderful young couple and for one reason or another not able to have children. and people pray for them, and sometimes they adopt and that type of thing. But you don't know how they're related in the past. They might be seventh cousins over here, or sixth cousins over here, or fifth cousins over here. Because if you think about it, everybody has a diamond-shaped genealogical tree, okay? We come from Adam and Eve, two people, and it broadens out here, and then somewhere the diamond turns back this way, because we all have two parents, and they all had two parents, and they all had two parents, so we all have this diamond-shaped genealogical tree. And so, especially, you know, in the Middle Ages and ancient world and so forth, people didn't travel much, and so there's a lot of people marrying very close geographical area. So the scientists tell us that it's like everybody in human history has married their second cousins as far as the genetic effect on people. And so because of that, the human race is going extinct. Okay, now Dr. John Sanford was a geneticist at Cornell University. He's retired now, but he travels and speaks, and I've talked to him. I said, how long do we have until the human race goes extinct? And he said, it's hard to calculate, but we don't have as much time in front of us as we have behind us. So I'm going to set a date for Christ's return, all right? It's going to be at least in the next 6,000 years. Okay, he has to come and rescue us. Otherwise, the human race, nobody will be able to have children, and the human race will go extinct. Anybody have any follow-up questions on that? So when somebody asks you about where did King get his wife, you can point out to them the terrible predicament we're in, you know, that we're on the downward slide. People, I think, are, they're kind of brainwashed and thinking that things are getting better and better. And certainly we have modern medicine, and, you know, we eat bananas in the wintertime in Iowa and stuff like that. I knew they weren't Iowa bananas. And so we were able to get food from all over the world and so forth. And that's made us healthier and so forth. But if we had to live like people in the past, like in the Middle Ages, where they threw their sewage out in the street and so forth, we'd probably last a week under those kind of circumstances, all right? So we're kind of masking this terrible downward decline of the whole human race. Any follow-ups on that? Okay, maybe afterwards. All right, so we're going to talk about lightning now. So is there lightning in the Bible? Well, there certainly is. Oops, I went the wrong way. Let me go the right way. Here we go. Exodus 20:18, and all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings and the noise of the trumpet and the mountains smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. So this is the children of Israel, Mount Sinai, and they're afraid. Okay, apparently there's a lot of lightning on top of Mount Sinai. I often wonder about the noise of the trumpet. Ever wonder about that? I saw a YouTube video where the gases from the volcano were escaping between the rocks, and it sounded like an Israeli trumpet, you know, a shofar. It was going, ooh, like that, okay? So I thought, well, there's the trumpet sounding. There's few things that strike fear into the heart of man more than thunder and lightning. Are those fears overblown? I don't think so. I told you that my father came through Ellis Island, and then I was born in New Jersey, and one of the things we used to do, we went huckleberry picking every year. Huckleberries are wild blueberries out in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, and I was there 12 years old, and a terrible thunderstorm, and I'm up to my ankles in water, running for the car, and I felt the hair on my head start to go up. Now you can see it kept going to heaven, but okay, but the hair on my head started going up, and that's a bad sign in a lightning storm. And then a lightning bolt hit this tree in front of me, and I felt that surge of electricity around my body, and that was a scary experience for a 12-year-old boy. So that can be really scary. Now here's a picture of 323 reindeer in Norway killed by one lightning bolt. So they're out on the tundra, and when herds of reindeer get scared by lightning, they kind of huddle together. That's a bad idea. And they have a problem. Those of you who are electrical engineers or whatever, you understand this, that they have front legs and back legs. So there's a big potential difference between the front and the back when the lightning hits the ground. And so it just goes through the whole herd like that and kills the whole herd. Okay? So one lightning bolt did that. Okay? Now, when my wife was a kid, they told her that if she was in a lightning storm, that she should lay flat on the ground. But that's a bad idea, okay? Because with lightning hits the ground, it just goes through your body like that. But that's back when they didn't like children, I think. Okay. So I wanted to do I was trying to get some lightning here. You saw I had some of you asked me what this was I had. If you could come help me, Pastor. This is an Odin coil. If you could just hold it like this. And there's a button here, all right? I'll tell you when to push that button. And it takes the house voltage, which is 110 volts, and transforms it to 50,000 volts. And so I'm going to touch 50,000 volts. And the question you should be asking yourself is, why doesn't it kill me? My wife always says at this point, it's because I have life insurance, so she's not worried. All right. Okay, so I put these thimbles in my fingers because they burns my fingers if I don't do that. So go ahead and push the button. Okay, and I can even light a light bulb. Okay, thank you for that. You did a great job. I might hire you as my assistant someday. All right. So how come I survived that experience of 50,000 volts? Now, some people will say, well, there just wasn't enough current, but I can assure you there's enough current to kill me. So, It is alternating. It was alternating current, yes. Yep, yeah, it's alternating. High frequency alternating current. There's plenty of, so let me explain it to you. So lightning would have 1 billion volts and 50,000 degrees temperature, and yet only 1/3 of people hit by lightning are killed by it. 2/3 of people survive. There's plenty of current there. So what is it? It's because lightning and my spark here are made of electrons, and electrons are negatively charged, and like charges repel each other. And so the electrons want to go on the outside of my body instead of the inside of my body, and that's what keeps me alive. So if you're ever out in a lightning storm, what you want to do is you want to put your feet together so there's not a big potential difference, all right? And then get as low to the ground as you can. You're trying to protect your heart. Okay? Now you might read about some poor guys on the golf course gets hit by lightning and burns all his clothes off. And I often wondered about those newspaper articles. But that's because the electrons go on the outside of the body. Now they're terribly burned. They're not, seriously hurt, but they survive because their heart keeps beating, okay? So back, years ago, there was this controversy between Tesla and Edison. And Edison was, of course, DC, and Tesla was AC. He worked with Westinghouse. So Edison cooked up this great idea that he would have the state kill somebody, a capital punishment, electrocute somebody in an electric chair in order to discredit Tesla. And so that's where the execution by electric chair came from. So when I was young, that's why they used to kill criminals. But it was a terrible idea because the electrons don't want to go to the inside of the body. They want to go on the outside. And so it caused a lot of really gruesome deaths. And finally, the Supreme Court ruled it as cruel and unusual punishment, which it was. Okay. So just remember that. Remember the electrons are trying to get as far from each other as possible. And that's why I survived that. Sorry, hon, you won't get your money from my life insurance. All right, if she's watching tonight. All right, so how dangerous is lightning to people on the ground? It's estimated for every 600,000 strikes, one person is struck. So ground strikes hit between 500 and 1,000 people in the U.S. each year, but like I said, about 70% survive. Well, what else do we have here? We have lightning in Job. It's biblical. In fact, again, there's a lot of science in the book of Job. So Job 37:15, dost thou know when God disposed them, that is how he controls the clouds, and caused the light of his cloud or lightning to shine? Well, of course, Job didn't know. And I'm not sure we completely understand how this works. But here's our best guess at this. So what you have, let me get my little pointer here, is so you have the rain's coming down, and you have updrafts going up. And so as the updraft goes up, it rips the electrons off the raindrops or the ice crystals or whatever. And so the negative charges accumulate at the bottom of the cloud and positive charges at the top of the cloud. Now we get a charge difference, all right? And so the only way to neutralize it is for there to be either cloud-to-cloud lightning or cloud-to-ground lightning to neutralize that charge difference, okay? So that's how we think it works. But actually, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Job 37:11 says, also by watering he wearieth the thick cloud as he loads the clouds with moisture. He scattereth his bright cloud. He scatters his lightning through them. Okay? And then Job says, in Job 38:35, he said, God says to Job, canst thou send lightnings that they may go and say unto thee, here we are. So how does this work? Job obviously couldn't send lightning in a particular place, and we can't do it either. We're powerless like Job was. We think what happens is, you notice how zigzaggy it is? Okay, ever wonder about that? So there are what we call cosmic rays, and cosmic rays are highly charged particles that originate, some of them in distant galaxies. And they're constantly going through the Earth's atmosphere. They're going through this building right now, going through your bodies like that. Now, sometimes they'll hit a piece of your DNA or whatever, and it'll cause a mutation. But your body's pretty good at fixing those things, okay? We know if we send astronauts into space, they get a lot of mutations from all those charged particles up there in outer space, not protected by the Earth's magnetic field. But so we're pretty good at repairing those. But they're zinging at all different angles through the atmosphere. And so it opens up a channel for the lightning to follow. And that's why it's following where the cosmic rays have already gone. And that's why it gets that pattern. So, I mean, I had a girl one time in a high school, and she said, well, why did lightning come and hit my father? He was out getting wood, and it killed her father. That's a terrible tragedy, but we don't control those things. Only God controls those things. We can't tell the lightning where to go. It's Job 38:25. Here's a little bit of scientific foreknowledge. We talked about that last night. It says, who hath divided a way for the lightning of thunder to cause it to rain on the earth? Well, there's actually two bits of scientific foreknowledge. One is this idea about the way of a lightning, these lightning leaders, these lightning channels. We didn't know about these until recent years. It's just been in my lifetime we figured this out. So how did Job know about this? Well, obviously it's inspired by God. He made all these things, okay? And then to cause it to rain on the earth. Well, they say, well, see, these ancient people, they didn't understand that rain causes lightning. Lightning doesn't cause rain. But wait a minute, that's not true. We know from actual experiments that electromagnetic pulse can cause it to rain. Now, there's clouds up there today, right? They didn't rain. How come some clouds rain and some clouds don't? You ever wonder about that? Well, those rain droplets have a charge on them, and that charge keeps them apart. They're repelling each other, okay? And so if you put a strong electromagnetic pulse, it'll push those droplets together. They get big enough to fall to the ground. So lightning can cause rain. You ever had that experience where it's just drizzling or raining a little bit, and then there's a clap of thunder, and it just pours down, all right? Ever had that experience? Well, that's what's going on there. So again, another piece of scientific foreknowledge is the idea that lightning can cause it to rain. Now, this is a picture of the Garden of the Gods. How many of you have been to the Garden of the Gods? Wow, a lot of people. Okay, great. And so that's in Colorado Springs. And now if you remember, there's a bronze plaque on side of one of those formations. And it says, be careful because if it's raining on top of Pikes Peak, that lightning can come 10 miles, even if it's blue skies and sunny down in the Garden of the Gods, that lightning can go 10 miles down and kill you. I'm not sure what you're supposed to do with that information. I think it was written by a lawyer. But you think, okay, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I get out of here? And but that's true. So that's a picture of one of those 10-mile long lightning strikes going from the top of Pikes Peak to the Garden of the Gods. Just let me tell you some of the amazing things about lightning. We know those lightning channels are only about 1/2 to 1 inch thick when they short circuit to the ground. And the reason why you can see it, of course, is because when that lightning goes down, it's so hot, 50,000 degrees, it expands the air faster than the speed of sound, and so you get a shock wave, and that's what thunder is. It's just the rapid expansion of the air because of the heat of the lightning. The length of cloud to ground lightning, as I mentioned, can be as much as 10 miles long. Lightning travels, maybe about 100,000 miles per second. Okay, so it's really, really fast. And one lightning stroke can have enough energy to lift a 1-ton object 62 miles high. And lightning can strike as many as 40 times in the same channel. So this idea that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place, forget about it, okay? Okay, up to 40 times in the same channel. So let's go on. I lost my picture here, if you can help me with that. Oh, okay, that does it, all right. I didn't want to start day trading stocks or something. Okay, here we go. Okay, so wave for the lightning, thunder. So it's only been in the last few years. I think this is 2017. This is the first pictures. It's from Science News. I actually copied it from Science News. We got our first pictures of a lightning channel or a lightning leader, okay? And you can see it in sequence there. See, it's coming, in this case, the leader is coming from the top and from the bottom. This is not lightning, this is the actual leader, okay? And we don't see this because they're really fast, okay? And so when they meet, you can see where that red box is. They got it just off the frame there, and then it's overexposed because the lightning goes through that channel. So the leaders are coming from both sides, following the track of the cosmic rays, and when they touch, you get a circuit, okay? And the lightning goes through that. In the last couple of years, we've been able to actually see these leaders. So if you look in the upper left here, let me get my pointer so you can see what we're talking about. So it starts up here. So those are lightning leaders, okay? And this one touches the ground, and bang, you have the lightning flash. So they're really not very bright, and they're very fast. So this is taken at 60 frames per second, okay? So they're doing it very, very fast in order to get that. So you never see it because it's too fast and also too faint, so forth. But it's interesting, for the first time in history, we were able to see those lightning channels or leaders that the Bible talks about in the book of Job. So that's pretty good scientific foreknowledge, don't you think? Job 37 and verse 3 and 5 says, He directeth unto the whole heaven, He unleashes His lightning beneath the whole heaven, and the lightning unto the ends of the earth. After it a voice roareth, He thundereth with the voice of His excellency. He will not stay them when His voice is heard. God thundereth marvelously with His voice, and great things He doeth, which we cannot comprehend. So here we're talking about thunder. Now it's not really, of course, the voice of God, all right, speaking poetically here. But as I mentioned, that surrounding air is expanding at supersonic speeds, and you have a shock wave, and it decays. Now you say, why do I hear different kinds of sounds? Sometimes you hear an explosion, sometimes like crackling or hissing. So there's a lot of things. There's there's different branches coming off the lightning. Sometimes it's going away from you, sometimes it's coming toward you. Okay, and it depends on how much moisture is in the air as far as the sound is concerned, and the topography and so forth. So we get a lot of different sounds for lightning, but it's all based on this idea of this sound wave, traveling, this air traveling faster than the speed of sound. Well, does lightning do anything useful? Okay, is it just there to show God's power and His glory? Does it do anything for us? And the answer is it does. So we have lots of proteins in our bodies, and proteins are made of nitrogenous material. And how do we get the nitrogen into our diet? Well, those of you who know about chemistry, you know that we have 78% of nitrogen in the air, and that nitrogen is made of atoms of nitrogen that are held together by a strong triple bond. And we don't have any mechanism within us to break those bonds apart and get the nitrogen into a form that our bodies can use. And we call that fixing the nitrogen. It gets into a form our bodies can use. Well, God has two ways of doing that. One is using legumes, which are crops like peas that can fix the nitrogen. It's a pretty good trick. And then lightning. Lightning has enough power to rip those nitrogen atoms apart and put the nitrogen in a form that our bodies can use. So God uses lightning to feed us. Now, during World War I, the Germans were surrounded by the Allies, and they were cut off from their source of nitrogen to make gunpowder. And so they, Bosch and Haber, figured out a way synthetically using high pressure and temperature to actually fix the nitrogen. They weren't trying to do it for any useful purpose other than blowing people up. But we use it today to make artificial fertilizer. Okay? So I would say of all the food you eat right now, probably half of it's from artificial fertilizers, probably a quarter from lightning and a quarter from legumes, if I had to guess. Okay? So, of course, as the world population expands, we need more and more nitrogen for our crops. Well, here's a picture of the International Space Station, and you can see all the lightning strikes taking place. So there are like 4 to 6 lightning strikes per second somewhere on the Earth at any given time. And that translates into tons and tons of nitrogen that can get into their food supply. And I think that works out to like 18,000 thunderstorms somewhere on Earth at any given moment. Anybody heard of fulgurites? Who's heard of fulgurites? We got a few who know about fulgurites. So fulgurites are fossilized lightning strikes. So sometimes you get ones that are, more vertical like this. Sometimes this is a horizontal one along the top. That's the lightning goes across the top of the ground and so forth. There's so much energy in the lightning, it actually melts the sand and turns it into a glass tube. I bought a piece of one on eBay. You can do it too if you'd like. So there were a couple scientists down in Florida who were trying to figure out how many fulgurites should there be. They lived in Tampa area. There's lots of sand there. It's kind of lightning capital of the world. And so they said, well, the Earth's like 4 billion years old, and there's 4 to 6 lightning strikes per second somewhere on Earth, and this many in the Tampa area and so forth. And they calculated that there should be 4,000 fulgurites per square meter in Tampa Bay. So if the Earth really was 4 billion years old, everybody would know about fulgurites. But because so few know about it, that's proof or evidence that the Earth is only thousands rather than millions or billions of years old. So I thought that was an interesting thing. So how's lightning used in the Bible? We've seen about it in science. And well, we see it, first of all, as a description of something that's indescribable. So like Ezekiel 1:13 and 14, for as the likeness of living creatures, their appearance was as burning coals of fire. like the appearance of lamps. It went up and down among the living creatures, and the fire was bright. And out of the fire went forth lightning, and the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. So it's describing cherubim. Okay, you ever seen a cherubim? So I never have. But here's Ezekiel's representation. And, the fire is bright, and there's sparks flashing, and they're darting around like bolts of lightning and so forth. So it'll be interesting when we get to heaven and we see a cherubim. We'll see how good his description is. Okay, but that's what cherubim looked like. And Daniel saw something similar, if you remember. So he lifted up my eyes and looked, behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz, his body also like a beryl, his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and feet were the color of polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. Does that sound like anybody? Have it in Revelation? Doesn't that sound like Jesus Christ? The vision of Jesus Christ to John on Patmos, the Son of God. It's interesting, you think about what will it be like to see Jesus the first time when we go to heaven. We often rely upon the description by Fanny Crosby. So here's a blind woman telling us what it's going to look like to see Jesus for the first time. I thought that's an interesting idea. But she says, oh, the soul-thrilling rapture when I view his blessed face and the luster of his kindly beaming eye. Well, luster, that's lightning. Luster is the word for the appearance of lightning. And so I'm wondering, when I get to heaven, I see Jesus for the first time, I go, ah! It's so bright I can't even look, And I never had that thought before. Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration says, as he prayed, the fashion of his countenance was altered, and his raiment was like white and glistering. So glistering, old English word, means dazzling white, like lightning, okay? So he appears like that. And we also see as a symbol of something that takes place very quickly. I remember I said it traveled 100,000 miles per second. So Matthew 24:27, for as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also be the coming of the Son of Man be. So I think some people think, well, I'm just going to wait to get right with God. And when he comes back, then I'll get right. But you're not going to have time, okay? It's going to flash 100,000 miles per second, across the sky, and like the twinkling of an eye, and he'll return. It could be tonight. It may happen tonight that he would come back. Are you ready? Are you ready for him to come? Tonight, all right? I'm praying that. I don't know about you, but even so, come quickly, Lord Jesus. And Luke 17:24, for as the lightning that lighteneth out of one part under the heaven shineth unto the other part under heaven, so also shall the Son of Man be in his day. It's also used as a description of the humiliation of Satan. So Luke 10:18, it's really interesting to me. So Jesus sends the disciples out 2 by 2. Remember, he tells them not to take a staff or a purse or extra pair of sandals or whatever. And they come back and they're all excited, because they were able to cast out demons and heal people and so forth. Now, if we had been there at the time, we would have just seen some, dusty disciples, coming back. But Jesus says this, when they're all excited about this, he says this. He says, in Luke 10:18, and he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning falling from heaven. That's really an odd thing to say. If I was a pastor, which I'm not, I think I'd do a whole series on all the strange things in the Bible that sound odd to us. I mean, when Satan fell from heaven, that was a long time before that. That's very early on, okay? And he's saying it's like that, okay? In other words, he's saying this, what you've done, disciples, is a notable defeat for Satan. He could see the true significance. Now, I was raised in a Christian home, My mother was a Sunday school teacher, and I went to something called summer Bible school. It was like vacation Bible school, except it wasn't a vacation. We had textbooks and tests and so forth. And I still remember Mrs. Edward Thompson gave a flannel graph message on Jesus knocking on the door of our hearts. And I flannel graph picture of Jesus knocking on this door. It had no handle on it. He couldn't open it up. And she explained to us that we would have to open that door for him to let him into our hearts. And she said, how many of you want to let Jesus come into your heart? And I'm 5 years old, and I raised my hand. Okay, I want Jesus to come to my heart. And so I remember this, and really I got saved. I ran down the corridor there and to my mother's classroom. I said, Mommy, I just asked Jesus to come into my heart. And she said, that's nice, let's go eat lunch. So that's my salvation experience. But if Jesus had been there, he would have said, I saw Satan fall as lightning from heaven. He would have understood the true significance of what just happened. So you folks that are working with children, you don't understand. You don't see what's going on spiritually in those young hearts that you're dealing with. Keep it up. Don't be discouraged, because you never know when it's a real thing. Okay, there's a real transformation that occurred in that little life. Martin Luther was planning to be a lawyer. He was walking from one town to another in 1505, July 2nd. And he had an experience kind of like me when I was 12 years old. He got hit by a bolt of lightning and it knocked him to the ground. And he cried out, Saint Anne, help me, I will become a monk. Now this is long before he knew about salvation by grace through faith. He thought of God as trying to, as his enemy, trying to kill him, and scared him, so forth. And, sometimes it takes a bolt from the blue to get our attention, whether literally or figuratively. Romans 1:20 says, for the invisible things from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even as eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse. That means anybody who's seen lightning, anybody that's heard thunder is without excuse. Okay, that means everybody in the whole world. Okay, as far as understanding the power and the majesty of the Creator God and our responsibility to him. Captain Alan Beam was an Apollo astronaut, and he wrote this account. I actually found a picture of it, the Apollo 12 being struck by lightning as it rose into the heavens. He says, test pilots have a litmus test for evaluating problems. When something goes wrong, they ask, is this thing still flying? If the answer is yes, then there's no immediate danger, no need to overreact. When Apollo 12 took off, the spacecraft was hit by lightning. The entire console began to glow with orange and red trouble lights. There was a temptation to do something, but the pilots asked themselves, is this thing still flying in the right direction? And the answer was yes, it's headed for the moon. So they let the lights glow as they addressed the individual problems and watched the orange and red lights blink out one by one. That's something to think about, he said, in any pressure situation. If your thing's still flying, think first and then act. The same principle applies to our lives. When you get hit by a bolt from the blue, whether figuratively or actually, it's a good time to take account of your life. It says in 2 Corinthians 13:5, examine yourselves whether you be in the faith. Prove your own selves, know ye not your own selves, how that Jesus Christ is in you, except you be reprobates. So we're not talking about people doubting their salvation here. In context, he's actually saying to the people that you can gain assurance by looking back. You can see a pattern in your life, toward God and toward heaven. I had a secretary, and she had a tragic life. She married her high school sweetheart, which is fine, had 2 children. And then he got lung cancer and died. I mean, her whole life was to marry this man and raise a family with him. She never thought that he'd be taken from her at such a young age. Well, she didn't have a college education. She didn't have job skills. She had 2 children to raise. She didn't have any finances. And then she got lupus, struggled with that. And then she got cancer, which eventually took her life. And she had trouble with her teenage children at that time, rebelling and so forth. And I remember coming to work and her doubting her salvation. And she was so low. And it's possible to be so emotionally low that you doubt even that you're saved. But I think what we need to do in a case like that, it may happen to anyone in this room, is we need to take stock of our lives and look at the direction of our lives. That's what Paul is saying. You know, examine yourself. Look at the course of your life. Can you see that you're in a direction. You're headed not to the moon, but you're headed to heaven. And even though you may not feel like that, even though your emotions are raw, and you still know that you're one of Christ's child. You're one of Christ's children because you know the direction of your life has been toward God instead of away from him. So I think that should be an encouragement to us. So let's wrap this up. So if we're going to ask ourselves, there's lightning out there, I think the first thing you need to say is, am I in a safe place? Okay? Just remember those reindeer, all right? Second thing I would think, the Creator God is in control of the world, and I am not. He tells you, he directs where the lightning goes. I don't have any control over that. And there's a lot of things in our lives we don't have control over. And then I would think God designed lightning for my good. He uses it to give us protein, give us something to eat. He feeds us using lightning. And then I would say Jesus looks like lightning. Okay, we see that in the Bible. So that's an interesting thought. And then I would say I'm not afraid of unexpected events because I can see evidence in the way that I live my life that I'm a child of God. So all those, I think, would follow in rapid succession. And perhaps when you get to that low point in your life, that you'll be able to take into account and see that as well. But of course, it's possible there's some here tonight who do not know Jesus Christ as Savior, and I'm not discounting that. And if you can't see that pattern in your life, then maybe it's time to come to Christ for salvation. Okay, what questions do you have? Any questions that this has raised or anything else about science in the Bible? Yes, sir.
Could you explain again how it actually creates nitrogen?
Okay, so you have these 2 nitrogen atoms, and they're held together by a strong triple bond, and the lightning blasts them apart. Okay, and so now the nitrogen is free to attach itself to an oxygen atom. So now you get nitrogen oxides. And those nitrogen oxides then are absorbed by plants, okay, who use as food, and the animals eat the plants, and we eat the animals or the plants, and that's how we get the nitrogen in our bodies. Okay? Yes?
Is that a lightning bolt, or what is it comprised of?
Electrons. It's made of just electrons. That's right. Lots of electrons. Okay. So for the kids, I should have maybe done it tonight, but I have a little energy tube. I just hold it, it lights up and buzzes and so forth. It's 1 milliamp. Now 1 milliamp would be, I can't feel it, all right? 1 milliamp is 6.22 times 10 to the 15th electrons flowing per second. So that's 6 with 15 zeros after it per second. So you wonder why you've never seen an electron? Because they're really, really small. Okay, we'll talk to the kids about it tomorrow. Okay, and so that's all it is. It's just a lot of electrons. Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, I've stunned them into silence, Pastor. You want to close for us?